This is Wabash County Public Library Oral History Program interviewing William Houston Woods at his home, 806 Sunset Drive, Wednesday afternoon, March 14th. Houston, it's a pleasure for you to take your time today to have the library interview you, and let's get a little background, when and where you were born and your parents and your mother's maiden name.
I was born in Wabash, Indiana, on the south side. My father was William Edward Woods. My mother's maiden name was Flora, Belle, Ausch.
What date?
On May 9th, 1898.
Well, that makes you how old today?
75 years old.
75 years old. And what did your father do?
My father was a semi-skilled worker. He worked at the Wabash Cabinet Company, operating a machine there for many years. And in between times and during layoffs, he worked as a farmhand. He was raised on a farm near Amboy, Indiana.
And was your mother a native of?
Yes, she was. She was born in Dark County, Ohio, but came to Wabash, Indiana, and she was about 2 years old. So her entire life was spent in Wabash County.
Do you remember your maternal or your paternal grandparents and what they did and what they looked like and so forth?
I remember my maternal grandparents. My grandfather was a farmer, and I think it was probably the one man who raised tobacco in Wabash County. Mm-hmm. And my grandmother was, I remember, as a little old lady, a very sweet disposition, and I thought a great deal of. Mm-hmm. My paternal grandparents, my grandfather, I never saw. He was killed at the age of 36 by a falling tree. He was a cabinet maker. He was the type of man that could go out and cut down a tree and make a beautiful piece of furniture out of it. Mm-hmm. And my grandmother, paternal grandmother, I have seen her and know her slightly, but she lived around among her grandchildren, and for some reason never seemed to spend much time with us. I remember when I was about 10 years old, I had some kind of a project I'd seen in the American Boy magazine. I was trying to make a device of some kind, and she did a lot of sewing on it for me, took a lot of interest in it. And well, little I seen, I liked her very much, thought she was just quite wonderful.
Do you remember your grandfather's tobacco raising venture here in Wabash County and how it went and what he did and so forth? Was this shade-grown tobacco?
No, it was field-grown tobacco. And at one time, his farm covered the entire area of what used to be called a hollow on the south side, where it is now occupied by the Wagner Electric Company, and went on west to where it went back toward the Wabash River. Uh-huh. And I don't know how many acres he had there, but he raised tobacco for a number of years and apparently very successful. I remember his drying shed that he had on his property, and I think that curbed him ever wanted to smoke tobacco, but he used it anyway. I'd go in there and it smelled very sweet, and I loved the smell of it. After in a few minutes, I was beginning to get sick, and I was cured on tobacco before I was 6 years old.
Did he have quite a few acres of tobacco under cultivation there?
I would guess he must have had 60 or 70 acres under cultivation there.
Mm-hmm. He was the only tobacco farmer in Wabash County?
At that time, and he may have been the only one that ever tried it. I'm not sure. The climate here is not too good for it. It's a little bit cool. Mm-hmm. Of course, I know they raise it in Canada now too, but at that time it's considered quite a thing to grow tobacco in this part of Indiana.
Mm-hmm. Where would he sell his tobacco?
I don't know. I don't know where it was marketed. I couldn't say.
Yeah. And what was his name?
Abraham Ausch.
Ausch.
U-L-S-H.
U-L-S-H. Yeah. Good. Well, that's real interesting. Being the only tobacco farmer and had all that land out.
I wouldn't put that down as a hard and fast fact, but as far as I know, he was. At least he was at that time. Because I said the climate was not quite right here. It discouraged people from trying it. But he was apparently very successful. I know he did it for a number of years.
Where did you go to grade school?
So the old South Side School, South Wabash.
Do you remember your teachers, any of the teachers or anyone that made an impression on you in those days?
Oh, I remember several. I remember Miss McNamee, my teacher in the first grade that I liked very much. Then there was Miss McHenry that I had in the 6th grade, and Ethel Bent in the 4th grade, Gladys Gardner, 5th grade, and I think above all, Rose Coate in the 8th grade.
Yeah. How do you spell her name?
C-O-A-T-E, I believe.
C-O-A-T-E, yeah.
She had 2 brothers that had a grocery here in Wabash. I think that's the way their name is spelled. The family has died out now. I don't know.
Where was the family home?
You mean my family home?
Yes.
Well, my parents seemed to move quite frequently. I was born on corner Columbus Street and Glen Avenue in South Wabash. And later they moved to the north side, and I guess I more or less grew up on the north side, in North Manchester, on Manchester Avenue.
Where did you go to high school then?
Wabash High School.
And what year would that have been?
I graduated in 1916.
1960. And any impressions of your high school days, of teachers or fellow students or activities?
Well, I guess so. It's get a little remote now. I don't think I took too active a part in anything in particular. One of my friends was Lawrence Evans, Robert Adams, Glenn Bowman, and Russell Comer, deceased. And my teachers, I liked Bess Barry, that's because I liked mathematics. She died just recently.
Yes, I noticed that.
And I also liked Stella Moore because she taught history, which I also liked very much. And Miss Blaney, I liked as a person. I never had a class with her because in those days taking a foreign language was optional. I opted to take more history and mathematics and no foreign language.
Who was principal in those days?
Owen J. Neighbors was principal.
And the superintendent was?
Orville Pratt.
Orville Pratt.
Orville Pratt. You've heard of him?
Yes. And the old high school was down on Hill Street?
The old one on Hill Street, yeah. What's I think it's the school city's headquarters now.
Yes.
Office.
Did quite a few of the boys your age go to school in those days? Or
most of them did. As I recall it now, I can't think of any of the boys what's at least started. And I think that possibly all but 2 or 3 finished. There's very few dropouts now. It's just something you just did. It was taken for granted you were going to do it. And so it was just a way of life, I'd say.
Did you go to any of the athletic events back in those days?
Yes, I did. I never took part in any. I was never quite up to being able to do anything myself, but I enjoyed the athletic events, especially football games. Of course, in those days, the school had no gymnasium, and the basketball games were played down in the old community gym on East Main Street.
Right.
And there was no dressing room, no accommodation with a cat. It was a pretty primitive thing. I was always surprised the place didn't burn down so now everybody in it because it was a regular fire trap.
But you went to the games and enjoyed it?
Oh, yes, I especially enjoyed the football. I remember the 2 Wolf twins were quite fans, Harold and Donald Wolf. And I always see them down there, and I enjoyed it very much. We had some pretty good teams in those days, too.
Yeah. Well, they would have been younger than you then. They didn't graduate till 1924.
No, they were younger than I,
Yeah.
but they were always great fans. And after, I was also a fan. I was out of high school, and I would attend the games and see them.
How did you like high school here?
I liked it very much. I enjoyed it very much.
Did you? Oh, good. What'd you do summers between high school?
Well, see, 2 summers I worked at the Wabash Cabinet Company as off-bearer for machine there, a machinist helper at the Wabash Cabinet Company. My father worked there at the same time, though I didn't work for him. And one summer I had a string of yards to the south side to mow. The hand mower in those days, hadn't heard of power mowers yet. And one summer I worked for an uncle of mine that had a small truck patch. Just an odd job, like about always open for a boy in those days. Well, one summer I worked at Wabash County Company too. They would hire extra help in the summertime.
Yeah. What was we know a little about the cabinet factory. What was the canning factory like? Where was it, and what did you do?
It's now part of the Deal Machine Works. It was incorporated into the Deal Machine Works. And handled the visual, handled the cans, and did whatever, hauled stuff around, did whatever was sort of a trucking job. And it's all unskilled labor.
What did they can?
Just vegetables that grew in this area, canned tomatoes. Let's see what the principal, I believe, and beets, and whatever is growing in the vegetable garden today, peas, beans.
What label did that go under?
I don't recall what that was.
What was the pay?
They just called it Wabash Cabinet Company.
Yeah. What was the pay in the summer job for someone like you?
Well, I think I got about something like $3 a week.
Hard work?
No, not so hard work, but it's kind of long hours sometimes.
Yeah.
It was kind of a messy work. It wasn't particularly pleasant. Not bad either.
Yeah. You were in the class of 1916?
1916.
Yes. And what did you do when you graduated from high school?
The first job was reporter with the Wabash Times-Star.
Wabash Times-Star. Yeah. And
Bill Sharp was the editor.
Bill Sharp, the editor?
Yeah.
Who owned the Time-Star then?
I couldn't say. I presume it was a Democrat paper, and I presume it was any Democrat politician in town probably had a hand in its management, but I couldn't say as to that. Bill Sharp's the only man I ever seen there we regard as boss.
Yeah. Where was the Time-Star?
On the south side of Canal Street, between Wabash and Miami, in about, let's see, I'm trying to think what is it, about 3 doors west of the Eminent Music Store in the corner.
Mm-hmm. And was that a weekly or a daily?
Daily.
Daily.
Yeah.
And what were your jobs as a reporter?
Well, I had the courthouse beat and making the round of the doctor's offices for illnesses and deaths.
Uh-huh. Were the doctors rather free with telling you what went on?
Yes, they were. Most were very friendly.
Uh-huh.
And I enjoyed, especially old Dr. Gilbert LaSalle. I liked him very much.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about some of the doctors back in those days. Who were the doctors?
Well, there's Dr. Lawrence Smith, who had a kind of a spectacular life. He was a very nice person, very dignified lady, wore very distinguished. Looked like he should be a professor or a high politician of some kind. He had one of the first cars in Wabash County, one of the first doctors to use an automobile, and he was nearly killed in an accident. He skidded off an icy road on a company call and was trapped in his car, nearly burned to death. His last conscious act was giving himself a hypodermic so he wouldn't feel the pain of burning to death. But they got to him and got and freed him before he. But at that time he'd passed out of his own hypodermic. He wasn't in a serious condition as they first thought. He lost both legs at his knees in the accident.
Did he continue to practice then?
Oh yes, he did. Then there was Dr. Judd, Father George Judd, who had an office on right across the City Hall North on Main Street, right by where this new parking lot is, that first building. He was a rather taciturn individual. He was, I think he rose to the rank of major in the First World War in the Medical Corps. And as you know, friend Gilbert LaSalle, I liked very much, had an office at his house there on the corner of Sinclair and Miami Street, I believe. And Dr. J.W.G. Stewart, who was my wife's family's doctor, a tall, very distinguished, very handsome man, gray, crisp gray mustache. And Dr. King on the south side, Dr. Ed Pearson, the father of the Pearson boys, who later became dentists and doctors here. Well, William, his son William is still living and practicing. And let's see, there's Dr. Schulte, Oliver Schulte, who lived in a house where the, I think Dick's Trading Post is now, on Manchester Avenue. And that's about all I think of now. There was more than that. I think those were the principal doctors. There's a Dr. Domer on Hill Street, across from the courthouse. I think the law office where he is now.
Was Dr. Wilson practicing then?
Oh yes, Dr. Wilson, Dr. Whistler were practicing.
Both of them practicing?
Both of them practicing, yeah. Let's see, I believe they're related. I don't know.
He was his nephew.
Nephew, that's right, yeah.
Right.
They were both practicing, and Dr. Whistler was he was a doctor for the Big Four Railway at the time, among other things. At the time that I worked down there.
Did in this cub reporter job that you had, this would have been the heyday of the Ku Klux Klan, or was this before then?
That's a little bit before that. I remember the Ku Klux Klan. That came late. I came about see, this was when I was a reporter. It was in 1916, after I got out of school.
Middle 20s.
Yeah, the Klan came along later. I think in the middle 20s. And I knew one of the organizers here, George, one of the bigger staff was the organizer here.
Did you, you weren't on the newspaper then?
No, I was on the paper. I held that job about a year. I didn't care too much for it. I'm not a person. I'm not an open press. I'm not a person to meet people. I'm not much of a greeter or anybody that can hail someone. I'm not the open type, but I just didn't. I didn't care for the work. I finally quit it, and I took a job down to the Big Four in the yard office down there.
Doing what?
Yard clerk. I check the trains in and out. I inspect the. In those days, cars refrigerated only with ice. I inspected them for proper refrigeration, and they kept records of the cars as they came in and went out, and kept the oil switch lamps filled, among other things.
Was there a restaurant upstairs at the Big Four in those days?
No, there wasn't.
No. Had there been?
Not to my knowledge. I never heard of one.
Yeah.
The upstairs all offices, as far as I know, of the division officials.
How long did you stay on the Big Four?
I was there about a year and a half. And I quit that job to go work in the factory. I went into the Cardinal Cabinet Company at that time, which is now the Regular Electric Company.
Mm-hmm.
And we made photograph cabinets for Sturgeon Roebuck.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I first met Harry Ostheimer. He was working there too.
Mm-hmm.
And we would make the cabinets. Sears would send down the hardware, the motors and so on. My job was help install the motors, test them, and get the mechanical part going in inspection.
Mm-hmm. Who was running the cabinet factory then?
It was owned by a Marion firm, and I don't recall the owner. But the superintendent there was a man by the name of Cornelius Miles, was superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
There's a man from Marion came over here, but spent so much time each week, but his time was directly Wabash and Marion.
Mm-hmm.
I can't recall it. Willis was his name. Willis.
How long did you stay at the cabinet factory then?
I was there about 3 years. I went from there, went in the Army in the First World War, and come back and took a little job again. I think it was civil those days. They told me when I come back, I have a job back, so I did, and I would just took right where I left off, like I'd never been gone.
Mm-hmm. You were drafted in World War I?
No, I enlisted.
In what outfit?
I did what it was. In there, I studied with artillery, and I was down at Camp Taylor in Kentucky, where most of the draftees from here were sent down there. I had draftees and enlisted men both down there.
Mm-hmm. And what was your Army career? Did it?
Really happened. The Army was signed before I ever got overseas. I never heard of shots fired in anger.
Yeah. So you just came back home and just went on
Just came back home and took over where I left just a few months before.
Yeah.
And that was the last in was the first out.
Yeah.
And I think I was only in the service about something like 5 months, something like that.
Oh, good. What did you do then after the cabinet factory, where you're assembling these?
Well, I always enjoyed drawing and mechanics too, so I just naturally did in engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And I took some courses in that, and I got a job at the old service motor truck company.
Uh-huh.
And I went in there as a blueprint boy, and later got on the drafting board and went on the board there for several years. And I guess about 1921, I left there and took a job at Honeywell's then.
All right, before we get to the Honeywell experience, what do you remember of Service Motor Truck?
It was a nice place where I liked the people. It was ideal working conditions. I enjoyed my work there very, very much.
Uh-huh. You were on the drawing board there?
Yeah, I was on the drawing board.
Yeah.
Charles Guernsey.
Charles Guernsey?
And Walter Petty was his assistant.
Uh-huh. And this was after World War I, so what were they making?
Motor trucks.
Yeah.
They had a big government contract. They made a medium-sized 2.5-ton truck for the Army. I think they called it the Model B. It was designed by the Army Ordnance, but it was contracted out to anybody that wanted to build it. Mm-hmm. And they built many thousand of those down here at the old service company, which is where the General Tire is now, of course.
Yeah. Was Irish O'Brien around in those days, or he left?
No, he hadn't come along yet.
Oh, he hadn't come along
His
yet?
father worked down there. Old Jerry was down there. He was quite a character. Everybody knew Jerry.
Yeah.
But let's see. I'm trying to think about Irish. Now, I'm confused about him. Because he is older than I am, too, come to think about it. A little older, not very much. I think he was out of town somewhere. I had a job out of town somewhere. He never went out there. I don't believe.
We did his oral history. Just
I
like
don't
we're
remember.
doing
Yeah.
with you. And,
Well, I never knew him very well. Never seen that much kind of. He was quite a football hero when he was in high school.
yeah, that was his forte, I guess.
Yeah, I don't remember what his college. I don't remember where he went to college. What he did in college.
Yeah. Let's check our tape.
Poor boys, I had a cold last summer, and I had a horse, and since then I've never entirely got over it. It's affecting the natural tone. Yeah. And I'm trying to talk much too fast, which I have a hard time slowing down.
Well, I think you and I get along extremely well, because I've been accused of talking too fast also. I guess it's the Irish in us.
You're a good coach.
Yeah.
I don't think I have an Irish in me. I think I'm strictly English as far as I know.
Okay, in 1921, you went to Honeywell's.
That's right.
How did this come about?
Well, I didn't think I was going to get along too far to set the Service Motor Truck Company. Besides, I think it was getting kind of shaky out there. Their business was falling off. They were talking about moving out of Wabash. I didn't want to move out of Wabash. So I heard there was a job over at Honeywell, so I went down there to work. The first thing they wanted, they were making a very complicated mechanical product from drawings made by a vendor of parts to them, the Karas Electric Company in Chicago, Karas. And they wanted to get their own drawings. They wanted every part and every device they made put down on paper in dimensions so that they could have their own records. Mm-hmm. So my job is to get these parts, measure them up, put them together, make the part drawings, make the sub-assembly drawings, and the final assembly drawings, write up records, parts lists, do all that work, get it all down in black and white. So they had their own control of their own records. And from that, then.
What was this that they were making?
Well, they were making what they're still making today, for that matter, part of their line. They're making temperature control devices.
That's what they wanted, the parts list and
yes,
the
but that
drawings?
was a complicated device. Now there were two Honeywell companies. Is that of any interest to you or not?
Yes, anything is of interest.
There was the Honeywell Heating Specialty Company, the old company, which was the officers were Mark Honeywell, Joe Tigg, and Harry McNamee.
Mm-hmm.
At the time that I went, that was beginning to be a dying concern. They had made a line of valves and fittings for hot water heating systems. And the other company, the Honeywell Heating Specialties Company, was a growing outfit that was pushing the old specialty company out of the picture. And they made this line of room thermostats and motor devices for opening and shutting the draft dampers on the old coal-fired furnaces.
Uh-huh.
And it was a rather complicated line, rather fussy line.
Were these both in the same building?
Both in the same building, working side by side.
Mm-hmm.
But the time that I was there, the old specialty company had been pushed back in the corner. You didn't hear much about them, and the only men in charge there was Joe Tigg and Harry McNamee.
Uh-huh. What was the reason for this?
Well, just like things today pass out, it's a change in living conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Hot water heating was expensive and cumbersome and hard to maintain, though it had many advantages.
Mm-hmm.
But the warm air was pushing it up because it was cheaper and easier to control, easier to install.
Yeah.
So naturally the devices that pertained to that were the ones that were popular and were growing in demand and volume.
Yeah. Am I getting this straight, that Mr. Honeywell, Mr. McNamee, and Mr. Teague had the Honeywell
Specialty company.
Company?
But Mark Honeywell was president of both corporations.
Yeah.
They were both his corporations.
But in the other company, which was called Honeywell Specialty?
Specialty.
Yeah.
The singular.
Yeah. Now, this was Mr. Honeywell's own, or was Mr. Teague and Mr. McNamee in on this also?
So they were in with him on it. They were under him because Mr. Honeywell was head of both companies.
He
had developed and invented the devices for both companies.
Yeah, but all three of them were in both companies at this time.
No, Joe Tigg and Harry McNamee had no part whatever in the specialties company.
Oh,
They were on the old company that did all of the hot water heating devices.
I see. Yeah. Now, where were you located then?
At that time, the old plant was in what was called the old Wabash Woolen Mill building, which is gone now. It occupied part of the space where Ed Core's heating plant is now on the south side of Canal Street.
Yes.
It extended west to where the old Somerton Mill was located, which is now part of the Plain Dealer building is now located.
Uh-huh. That was his first plant then?
Well, no. Before that, the first I knew, they were on the side of the Wabash Street Hill upstairs.
But you weren't
I
with
wasn't,
them?
Not at that time, no.
Yeah. Mickey McDaniels worked there, I know.
He did. I didn't know that.
Yes, he worked there.
No, I think it was about right at the end of the First World War, about 1919, that Mr. Honeywell leased this old war mill building.
Mm-hmm.
He took a 99-year lease on the building.
Mm-hmm.
The building's going now. The 99 years isn't up yet. So.
Yeah. Were there any traces of the old woolen mill when you were down there working?
No. They had been in this building, I think, 2 or 3 years before I started down there. At that time, it was completely set up with a machine shop and assembly floors, just like it was, finding the same general idea as any manufacturing plant.
Then what did you do? You were designing these drawings and parts and so forth. What did you stay on this job, or?
I finished the job, of course, in I think about a year's time, and then, of course, at that time the oil burner was the coming thing, and it was growing popular at leaps and bounds, and Honeywell was getting in on wanted to develop a line of oil burner controls. So I did the board work on developing these controls. Mm-hmm. Valves, pilot burner controls, and still open valve operated or motor operated valves. Mm-hmm. And of course still the room thermostat. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of competition those days. Everybody realized it was a gold mine, and it was. And it saved the Honeywell company because they were in rather dire financial straits from the depression that followed the First World War. Mm-hmm. And I might tell you a little story here. The second year I was down there, the business, of course, was seasonal. Income all came in during the fall and early winter months. The rest of the year, not much to do. And, of course, a lot of the help would be laid off in those months. When summer rolled around, the Mr. Honeywell made us a proposition that let us either stay, those that wanted to, if you were picked to stay, could work on half pay if they wanted to. And otherwise, it could just be laid off, except being laid off looking for a job, which are very, very few and hard to find in those days. So everybody, of course, was asked to, and actually stayed on at half pay, and I was happy to do it.
Did you?
I did.
Uh-huh.
And nothing was said about ever making that up. It just we were going to work that, but just do a full day's work for half a day's pay.
Mm-hmm.
But when business opened up in the fall, and the money began to come in again, when we had our paycheck, we got a check that paid us the rest of our half our summer's pay
Mm-hmm.
that we hadn't been given,
Mm-hmm.
which naturally pleased us all very much.
What year would that have been?
That would have been about 1922 or 23. I started there in 21, and that would have been about the year, or the second year, possibly. I'm not sure which it was.
How much were you hired in at? That's not too personal.
Not at all.
50 years later?
No, it was. I think I was hired in at. I believe it was $25 a week.
$25 a week.
Yeah.
And how many hours a week were you expected to work?
Well, it's pretty funny. Everybody put a lot of overtime in those days, not being paid for it. And normally it's an 8-hour day. Actually, it worked out to 9 and 10 hours usually as a rule.
Yeah.
Sometimes Saturdays.
How would the work? What was the work flow? How would it come to you and so forth? Was it hit and miss, or was it?
No. Our salesmen would pick up the. Of course, they would sense the market. What the market was going to want. What was going to be demanded. What the trend was. Which way the design of our water burner was going to go. What the quantity was going to be. Which way he would assess the value of those things and decide what we were going to develop and put in our line. Then usually he would come to me and give me an idea of what was wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And we would bring in competitors' devices and look at them. We had our own background on these things. And from that, I'd work up some kind of an idea how we were going to build it. I'd take the drawings, we'd put it down in the shop. The machine shop would build up a sound, we'd try to see how it worked, and we'd, whatever bugs in it, we'd comb them out, just like we do today. I don't notice any change in the way of doing things at that time from what was we were doing it when I quit work in 1968.
Yeah.
That's the process.
Yeah. Was what was Mr. Honeywell's role in those days?
His title was president.
Yeah.
And he was active in all branches. He was especially interested in engineering. He was mechanically minded. I don't think he had any formal training because I found they didn't know how you reduced anything by means of gearing.
He didn't know that?
No, but he's very mechanically minded. He always reminded me perhaps of Henry Ford. He was a kind of a homespun genius. He had a mechanical bent. He had a sense for what was right and what was wrong. And whenever you ask for an opinion of him, I'll gladly give it to you because I admired him very much.
Would he follow these drawings religiously then every
Well,
day?
no, he didn't. He couldn't involve himself that much in detail. No, I would put the drawings in the shop, and they would make the parts down there. Sometimes I'd assemble them myself. Sometimes somebody else would help me assemble them. We'd try them out and see how things worked out. That was when the organization was very small. Later, we developed a larger organization, and there's more division of work. I finally got to where I was just doing nothing but development work on the drafting board.
Were you the only one on the board in those days?
At the start, I soon had a boy to help me.
Who was that?
Dwight Roos. I don't think he's around here anymore. R-U-S-E. I hadn't heard his name for many years.
Still living?
I don't know. Last I knew he was in Fort Wayne. And then later, Lou Tyner helped me. He's an insurance man. He's in Kenosha, Wisconsin, I believe, or some such name as that in Wisconsin. His wife lives here in Wabash. Or did last I know her.
Yeah.
They're divorcing.
Yeah. Who else? Who worked in the factory now? How many were there roughly? And some of the people.
Well, when I started there, I'd say there's about 40 or 50 people in the factory. There was Don Rodebaugh, who was, I think his title was plant superintendent. There was Harold Rodebaugh, his brother, who had charge of the machine shop. And George Keller, who was in charge of thermostat assembly. Ed Vigas, who was in charge of the bench work. And I can't think what Rollins' job was at that time. He was there. I know he was on service work part of the time. He went on service jobs some at that time.
Rollin McDaniel.
Rollin McDaniel,
Yeah.
And let's see. I don't.
Was there any women in the office in those days?
Yeah, a lot of women in the shop too.
In the shop also?
Yes.
Yeah.
Remember Natalie Huffman in the shop down there. She and two of her daughters worked down there.
Uh-huh.
And there's one of the Colbert girls worked down there. I think that family has died out. And the one is Marlon. I think Marlon is still living. Marlon Colbert is still living, I believe. Mm-hmm. Marlon worked there himself and George Keller.
Mm-hmm. Was Marva Wawad Mr. Honeywell's secretary back in those days?
When I first went there, Miss Harper was his secretary. Mm-hmm. And she left for some other job. I don't know when Marvel came in. By the way, Marvel was my class in high school. Mm-hmm. And Marvel was there as his secretary for many years.
Uh-huh. What? Tell me about Mr. Honeywell and being around and the years that you were there. And
well, he was a very energetic person. He was always walked very briskly. A very, very neat dresser. Every hair always in place. He was always immaculately dressed. And he was the type of person he never expected more than a decent day's work out of any of his employees, but he drove himself very, very hard. Uh-huh. I think he lived and breathed his work. I don't think he had anything else much ever entered his mind. Though he took time to have a cottage at Lake Wawasee, one of the first ones up there, and he was also organized the golf club at Lake Wawasee. Mm-hmm. And
did you ever see his cottage at Wawasee?
No, I was never up there. I was just seen it just from the road, passing place. But I'll tell you a little story about him. It indicates kind of the type of man he was, how hard he drove himself. When we were first getting in the oil burner field, we recognized that we had that was going to be our salvation, and he wasn't going to let anything stand in the way of our getting control of as big a part of that business as we could get. So it was all kind of feeling our way on it, and of course we're always sensitive to fire. It makes sense we're making a heat control device. So word came in one day, I think it was on Christmas Eve, it must have been about 1924 or 5, that a house had burned down in Benton Harbor that had Honeywell control on their oil burner. Mm-hmm. And because his first thought was to find what had happened and get the facts the best he could. So he left here on Christmas Eve by himself in a blinding snowstorm to drive to Benton Harbor. Of course, those days roads in no direction, not what they are today by any means. He drove all night, right there in the morning. Never slept. He shaved and changed his clothes, went out to where this place was, spent all day on the field there, on the ground. And I guess he learned that it wasn't our fault until we were entirely clear on the thing. Mm-hmm. That's the way he did. He didn't think anybody went by, so didn't ask anybody to go with him. Left on Christmas Eve, and this blinding and terrible weather, mm-hmm. in an old Hudson touring car to drive up there. Mm-hmm. And his whole operation was like that. With himself, he was completely ruthless. Uh-huh. He spared not himself at all. Yeah. He's a rather austere person, but back of that kind of austere vision is the sense of humor and a great understanding of people.
Do you remember any humorous incidents or understanding of people, as you point out?
Well, no. I remember one humorous incident that everybody got a laugh about. When times were rather hard there in 1919 and 20, he decided he was going to develop and make a washing machine. So this is just before I came down there, and they built a model and they started the thing up, and I don't know how about drawing anyhow, threw water all over the place, about half drowned everybody, including Mr. Honeywell, was standing by watching it. They were all laughing about that. I was down there yet. Uh-huh. And no, of course he moved in a different circle about that. They were in Wabash society, and he moved in circles I had no comprehension of at all. Mm-hmm. But I liked him as a man, admired him very much, and I thought he really was tops.
Mm-hmm. Tell me what else happened in your Honeywell career then. You were developing drawings and so forth. And
well, I think it was about 1923 or 4. Our purchasing agent, Kenneth Vigas, left and moved to California. So they asked me to take over the job of purchasing agent down there, since they thought I knew materials and the specification of engineering work. Uh-huh. So I worked as purchasing agent down there from 1923 until the merger with the Minneapolis Heat Regulator Company. So it wasn't a merger, it was a takeover with the Minneapolis Heat Regulator Company.
On your purchasing agent's job, how much were you making by this time, first of all?
Well, I'm trying to think now. I gave you too high a figure on my first salary down there. I'm 25 weeks was wrong. I wasn't making that much. I don't remember. But as purchasing agent, I was making up to $250 a month.
$250 a month,
yeah.
Was that good pay by Wabash?
That was, well, I said it was. I knew several fellows, and one I knew I had a friend down doing machine work, doing about the same work. That's what he was making to the penny.
Yeah.
And I think that most of the factory heads were pretty well together in those days on salaries, just as they are today.
Yeah. You would have been around 30 years old then, and
Well, when I first took this job, I was I'd have been about 25 or 26 years old.
at the purchasing agent.
Purchasing agent.
Yeah.
And at that time, I never got entirely free of engineering. I'd be called in a consultation on engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And also I was in charge of receiving. Since I had put the orders out, I had to also have a record of when they came in. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you this about myself, it wouldn't be believable nowadays, but there was a 3-story building, and I had a desk or something, I had a headquarters on each one of the 3 floors.
Uh-huh.
The top floor I had my drawing board, and the 2 boys helped me up there. On the office level, I had a desk in the main office where I had a stenographer and the files there, and when I go and talk to the salesman. And on the first floor, I had a desk where I received the material and checked in the material. Of course, we get a carload of steel or according to the paper boxes, then I had some men to help me to handle that. Mm-hmm. But I think I must have traveled miles up and down those stairs every day. By the time I get into some engineering problem, there'd be a salesman downstairs, I'd go down and talk to him. And maybe at that time, a load of parcel post came in, I'd go down and open that up, see what that was, check it in. And that sort of thing went on. I loved it.
Were you married then?
No, I wasn't married.
You were still single?
Yeah.
Full of energy, huh?
Well, I guess so. I was naturally I was very thin as a young man. I didn't weigh over 120 pounds. I was about 35 years old, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And
You were giving him more than 8 hours a day?
oh yes, I had no idea how I averaged out down there. But other fellows did too. That wasn't unusual. It was just a way of life.
Were jobs hard to find?
But this time, no. Things in Wabash are pretty stable that time. You can move around a little bit if you wanted to, if you're dissatisfied.
Did Mr. Honeywell recognize this, that you were holding down 3 jobs? Or?
Oh yes, I'm sure he did. Other fellows did too. Mm-hmm. But I don't think as many had all these different levels that I had, and all the stair climb that I had to do.
Yeah.
That's what kept me thin, I guess.
Gosh, 3 floors, running up and down 3 different jobs would keep you thin.
And it didn't bother me at all. I just loved it. I was very busy, and I just loved it.
Yeah.
And it's quite a variety of work. And the only thing I hated was the interruptions. But if you get your mind on the full detail of some engineering thing, then have to go down and talk to some salesman, and maybe not even get to go back to where you started from. It was a little bit tough, but I didn't mind that. It was interesting.
How did the flow of request for raw material and so forth, was someone standardizing the flow of work into the various channels of purchasing?
No, I usually had to do that myself pretty much. At the start of the season, they would decide there's going to be so many thousand thermostats of a certain type, so many electric-operated damper motors, so many spring-operated damper motors, so many gravity-operated motors, and so many furnace stack safety controls, the other items in the line. And of course, I had my own bill of material, which I made it myself of each one of these items. Mm-hmm. And so I knew how many parts I had to buy, how many castings, how much sheet steel, how much sheet brass, how much thermostatic metal, how much silver contacts to make this many units.
How about the cash flow? Did anyone ever mention money?
No. Willard Huff handled it. He was Secretary of Treasury.
Yeah.
And he handled all the financial end of the thing.
But he never told you that there was X dollars available this season? Or?
No, I think that he and Mr. Honeywell must have decided when they budgeted for the season's production if the money's going to be available for it, because nothing was ever said to me about the availability of money at all. Yeah. And as far as I know, their credit was always good. I never heard of any financial stringency at all, any bind.
But you more or less just went ahead and ordered and...
They left it up to me. That's why they wanted me. They knew that I knew what parts were needed and what it took to make them, and the vendors and so forth. And of course, I developed acquaintance with these salesmen that came in.
Uh-huh. Was there ever any talk in those days of some type of union or?
No.
Were there any fringe benefits as we know them today?
I think about 1928 or 29. As a Christmas present, they gave us a paid-up insurance policy, life policy. I think it was very small. I think mine was about $1,000, something like that. Of course, $1,000 was a lot of money in those days too.
Mm-hmm. No vacation?
Oh yes, I had a two-week paid vacation.
2 weeks paid?
Yeah. For the straight time help. I think the factory, I don't believe the people on the clock had any paid vacation. I don't recall that they might have. I wouldn't say for sure about that.
Of course you would have been on salary.
Yeah. But I was always on salary. But Honeywell was regarded as a good place to work.
Why? I mean, why would you say that?
Well, it was pleasant work, it was interesting work, and their wage scale was at least up. I think it might have been a little bit ahead of the average in Wabash at that time. Because they always seemed to attract a pretty high-grade class of help, even for all the semi-skilled jobs.
What do you remember of the merger? We talked about the merger.
Well, I don't know. It was a disaster for everybody that had been there very long. And it was called a merger. Actually, it was not a merger. They just simply bought the company outright. As I understand it, Mr. Honeywell was hoodwinked on the deal, and he was given the title of president and set off in one corner to behave himself and be quiet.
That was in what year?
That was about 1930, I think, or 31. And W.R. Sweat, who was head of the Minneapolis Heat Regulator, became chairman of the board. And he was the Sweat family. He and his 4 brothers ran the whole outfit from top to bottom.
Yeah.
They dominated completely.
Let's go back a little ways. When was it that you had the first idea that there was anything going to be taking place?
Well, we knew there was some talk, but I think it came as a great surprise to everyone. Because nobody thought that any actual negotiations were in process.
Yeah. Was there any indication that they were short of money or?
No.
Purchasing went on and.
Purchasing went on. There's no break in the routine there until after the merger. Of course, after the merger, then things got in kind of a bind. Of course, they had their own organizations like we had ours here. They had their own officers and all their help, just as we had here.
Yeah.
And for a while, they made a sort of pretense of running the factory as an independent deal, but gradually they moved more and more to the seat of power, and they ran the place. And I understand Mr. Honeywell was given a very good financial settlement on the thing. They said that he was the sickest man in Wabash for a long time after that, because he was misrepresented to him. He wanted with no authority. Now, how through the years he came back into the driver's seat again, I don't know. It must have been a long uphill struggle.
Yeah. Was the merger around 26, 27?
Just later, no, it was about in the first years of the Great Depression, I guess, about 1929 or 30, the merger took place.
And you were still with them then?
Yes.
Yeah. What did you notice first when this merger was taking place? Did you see Sweats down here from Minneapolis at all? Or?
Oh, yes, they came down.
Yeah. And what was, which ones, do you remember which ones came?
I remember Harold, I don't think W.R. ever came down. Harold Sweat, the youngest of the family, he was down here quite a bit. Young, very personal young man. Yeah. He came around talking. He seemed like a very pleasant sort of person. But gradually, the Honeywell end of the thing faded out of the picture, and the Minneapolis end became dominant.
Did Sweats go into the details of purchasing and so forth, or not?
No. Shortly after I said a year after the merger, I went back on the drafting board again. I went back on engineering altogether. And there was a lot of ideas, a lot of new devices. And the purchasing thing, I didn't care for that anyway. That was what I wanted to do. And I was delighted to get back in engineering again. And then the Depression, of course, got worse and worse. There was more and more layoffs, and things began to look kind of shaky, both Minneapolis and Wabash, both there for a while. So I had a chance to get a job at one of Honeywell's competitors, H.M. Shear Company at Quincy, Illinois. So I quit Honeywell in 1932 to take the job out of Quincy. My wife and I moved to Quincy then.
Going back to the Honeywell story. Is when the merger took place, then did you lose pay or anything?
No, I didn't lose any pay.
Yeah.
That part went on okay, but I lost some authority. I had to work under the purchasing department at Minneapolis. Yeah. But that didn't last long. It was very short after that. I was put back on engineering work again, which I was delighted to do. Yeah. So our engineering down here was under Paul Shivers, and that we had attained a pretty complete autonomy on engineering.
Yeah. You kept it here.
Yeah. Most of us kept new development. Most of it kept here.
Yeah. Were the men in the factory? Were they alarmed that the thing was merged with Minneapolis?
Well, I think they were. So naturally, you wonder what's going to be next. If they're going to close the plant and move everything out of town or whatever, which they didn't do, of course. Yeah. There's always been a Honeywell plant here. But it finally got down to where there's no production here, practically no production. Only on new devices. We'd develop a device here. Well, this is after my time. But I decided to develop a device here to be tested here, and maybe the first the pilot production would be here. Like maybe the first 5,000 might be built here in Wabash. Then when they got the bugs out and the tooling finished, then they would take them to Minneapolis for mass production. Yeah. And I think Howard Worth was in charge of the plant down at that time.
Yeah.
And he's in Florida now. He's still living. I'm not sure.
No, he's dead.
Is he?
Yeah.
I think his wife, Mary. I call her name now. I believe she's still living.
Yeah.
She was a secretary down here
Right.
at the plant. Mary Morrow.
You mentioned that you thought that Mr. Honeywell's business career was over when they merged.
Well, I don't know. I give it any thought. At that time, he was a man. He must have been. That was in 1930. He died. Let's see when. In
58, 59.
Well,
he died in the late 60s. 68.
They said he was not in his 90s at that time.
So he'd have been born.
He had been born about.
He would have been 50 years old then.
Yeah, he had the appearance of a man about that age.
Yeah.
But he never lost that quick, springy step and that active mannerisms.
After the merger, though, would you say that he was not the... well, what would your impression be after the merger of Mr. Honeywell?
Well, it seemed like he sat in his office and made work for himself, had things to do.
Yeah.
He had a lot of money. He got a tremendous, apparently, at that time, a lot of money for his share of the business. Mm-hmm. But it looked like he didn't have much to do. Of course, he was in charge of the plant here, which was reduced to almost nothing. And I know he didn't say about it at Minneapolis. He went up to, I think he attended the board meetings. Mm-hmm. But he was just kind of a figurehead, I think. Yeah.
Did they start transferring men in and out from the Minneapolis and the...
Yeah, they'd take out
Wabash
one or two at a time. I didn't want to go up there. I'd heard about all the snow and cold weather they had in Minneapolis. I didn't want to go up there. That's one reason why I went to took this job at Quincy that I did.
Yeah. Did you ever see Mr. Honeywell mad during this time?
No, I never did, and I'd say he had one of us. One time he certainly had the grounds of being mad at me. I expected a tremendous bawling out, which I never got. I've heard that he is that he did really dressed out some of his help various times. Well, one day there's a job here that's installing a hot water heating system here in town with his controls on. And he wanted me to see the job, and he wanted me to meet him over there at, I think it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, I told him I'd bring him downstairs, and I had these 3 jobs, and I completely forgot all about it. And I happened to look out the window, and he was coming back across the street by himself. I thought, oh, I forgot this. Here's where I'm really going to get. I bet I'm out of a job. And I thought, well, I'd might as well get it over with. So I went down to his office and see him, and I said, well, I told him I was sorry. I simply forgot it. I was busy. I think he understood what I was trying to do. He didn't have any kind of smile. He said, well, Houston said it's over now, so we'll just forget about it, not say anything about it. And I'd expected what I heard about him. I expected the world's worst bawling out. Mm-hmm. That's all there was to it. And I couldn't see it held against me. He didn't take action of any kind. He didn't introduce my authority or my pay or any kind. I was genuinely sorry about it, in addition to the fact that I thought I was going to lose my job right then and there. I thought it would be the least that could happen to me. Yeah. And that's the way he was. You could tell about him.
When you went to Honeywell's competitor, what was the feeling?
Well, the feeling was they never knew Mr. Honeywell or any of the other men there. They knew Paul Sherb was chief engineer and they had a lot of respect for him. He was a man I worked under for a number of years down there. Mm-hmm. He came down from Joe next to Fort Wayne. And they were, sure at that time were developing a line of gas-controlled devices. Mm-hmm. So they just put in this new gas line across the Mississippi River that came up, I think it ended Jackson, Michigan at that time. And all this area was going to gas from oil to gas heat. Mm-hmm. And when I got there, they had developed a motor-operated gas valve with a sequence timing thing and a safety measure, and they developed a room thermostat. And they wanted to expand the line. The first job I had was to develop a new gas pilot control, so in case the pilot went out, it shut the whole system down. And that was the first job I had out there. And later I developed a new motor-operated valve and some more items there. Then I was going up there about 2 years. That was a family-owned company. You're not interested in this. This is all beyond Honeywell's.
Well, I'm curious to know what in the industry, what was the feeling toward Honeywell? You were in a competitive business, and
they were greatly respected. Well, they were one of the leaders in the field. Of course, after the merger of Minneapolis, they were almost a trust. Mm-hmm. They almost had a monopoly on that. There's a few very small companies like Shears, who at that time employed about, I expect, about 100 people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's Honeywell, they really had the lion's share by a great margin.
Yeah. Did you ever have the impression that Shear was trying to get some Honeywell knowledge by hiring a Honeywell employee?
Yes, I knew that. I knew that's why they hired it. They thought they just picking Honeywell's brains is what they were doing.
Uh-huh.
And that's why I got the job out there.
Did you have the knowledge, the basic knowledge that they wanted, or?
Yes, I did. But they were, as soon as I got there, I knew I was in a shaky position because the company was in very dire financial straits. It was a family outfit,
Mm-hmm.
3 brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And all through the boom times of the 1920 up to 1929, they hadn't put a penny back into the firm.
Mm-hmm.
They had spent as fast as they made it.
Mm-hmm.
So the depression caught them. I found out very quickly that just flat-footed. And I was out there about 3 years, about 2 years. I liked the work very much out there. I like these men very much. But I'd heard finally they had a platinum regarded loan, and that was everything gonna be rosy. Then the day I heard that they'd been refused a loan, I started looking for a job again.
Mm-hmm. Where'd you go?
I went to Square D Company.
Now, were they making similar controls to Honeywell?
No, they wanted to develop a line similar to that. They wanted to develop a line of air conditioning controls. That's what I went to Square D to do.
Yeah. Did they know that you had been a Honeywell employee?
Oh, yes. And I was looking for work, and I heard they wanted to develop this line.
Mm-hmm.
And through one of my salesman friends, by the way, that I'd made it, the acquaintance I made at Wabash.
Yeah. Now, had Square D, again, did they want to use some of this knowledge that you had gained at Honeywell? Or?
Yes, but the line is a little bit different. It's an air conditioning control line. We got into power-operated dampers,
Mm-hmm.
and much larger 700 I'll make controls for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I hired it at the Milwaukee plant. I was in Milwaukee there about a year, and they told me not to think about buying a house in Milwaukee because it's going to transfer the whole division over to Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
This again may not be of any interest to you. This is all away from. Anyway, I was a Square D for 35 years.
Yeah. But basically, again, they
I
fell
got the
back
job
on-
because of my Honeywell background. They got me the job.
Yeah.
And,
Was it usable?
I developed one device or 2 devices, and they decided instead to expand the line they already had. They had a line of pressure controls for water pumps and air compressors,
Mm-hmm.
like using filling stations and in lake cottages where there's a little water system.
Mm-hmm.
And they were selling this thing really with the millions. They decided that, since I was really the idea of automatic control, they wanted me to go into that then. So that's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was at Milwaukee about a year, and I was transferred to Detroit, and we were there about 10 years. They decided to move the division back to Milwaukee again. I didn't want to go back to Milwaukee.
Uh-huh.
My son fell in love with a girl there in Garden City, Michigan. And, we'd made a lot of friends there and contacts. We didn't want to go back, so they put me in what they call the switch and panel division, which is the main part of the Detroit plant at that time.
Uh-huh.
And so I went on a circuit breaker, which again is an automatic device, which operates on an overload electric current.
Right.
And so I was on circuit breaker design then. And we was in Detroit for 25 years.
And this jumping around, I shouldn't say jumping around.
Well, it is jumping
moving
around. It is moving around, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was in Detroit 25 years. That's pretty stable
Yeah.
for an engineer to be that.
As you look back now, were these companies rather hazy as to their patent rights and?
Oh no, they were all very, very firm on that.
Yes.
Yeah. Square D was kind of a conservative company. I was impressed when I went in to talk to their chief engineer about a job the first time. He had a motto hung on his wall. It said, "Be not the first by whom the new is tried, nor last to lay the old aside." In other words, he's got a very careful course down the middle.
Right. Tied down the middle of the road.
And it's still that way at Square D.
Yeah.
And, they have a plant at Peru, and also have one in Huntington.
Yes, I know.
But that's.
What do you, as you look back now at 75 years, what are your reflections and recollections of your years at Honeywell? Do you wish you'd stayed, number one? Or
No, I'm glad I got out of town.
Yeah.
I never learned much down. I never really got too far.
Uh-huh.
It was even if it hadn't merged with Minneapolis, I don't think I'd ever gone much beyond where I already was.
Mm-hmm.
But I was already in one of the I had a department. I had 2 departments actually,
Mm-hmm.
and I was still on consulting on engineering at the last. So I never got much beyond that.
Were you disappointed when they merged?
Oh yes, I was. I could see the handwriting on the wall of all of us. It came sooner or later. Either you went the Milwaukee, or he went someplace else.
Yeah.
Electrical engineering.
Do you remember some of the people you worked with back in those days at Honeywell, either fondly or otherwise?
Yes, I don't, there's no one doubt of what I genuinely liked them, and I believe they liked me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can tell if somebody doesn't like you.
Yes.
And everyone there I liked, I enjoyed the work, and I was very happy there, except for this other thing that came into the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think in time I would realize I wasn't going to get much beyond where I already was.
Did you think that Honeywell was going to be personally as successful as he was, Mr. Honeywell?
Well, he was always the head of the organization, of course. He was the top of the whole thing there. Mm-hmm. And I always thought he was a very capable man. He was, I'd say he always ran very much with Henry Ford. He was a mechanical genius. Mm-hmm. And I think money was secondary to the development of a product. Yeah. And a name and a reputation. Yeah.
Was a man by the name of Tillman, was he around there in the early days or not?
Well, I've heard rumors about Tillman. No, he was gone long before my time there.
Before your time.
I think the story about him, you probably heard that he designed the whole line, and they kicked him out and took over his patent or something of the kind. Mm-hmm. Did you ever hear that story? It's quite a common story. I think it was all a hoax. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of his first name. I want to say Harley or Harold. I don't think that was it. No, the story I heard was finally that Fred Walters designed a lot of that stuff, a lot of that equipment. But I would credit that story.
Fred Walters?
Fred Walters. The father of these boys that's here now. The one that, well, he was the son of Buster Walters that first started the company here.
Right. Why would he be designing Honeywell's?
Well, he and Honeywell were pretty good, close friends. Were next door neighbors there on Wabash Street. Mm-hmm. They were good friends, and as I understand it, Fred Walters had this sort of event. He liked to do that sort of thing. And then it was, I think he may have had some basic ideas. He never developed them. It was the final development of this Keras Electric Company in Chicago that later made all the parts for Honeywell's product and shipped them down here, like when I first went to work down there. Mm-hmm. I think they put the thing in the manufacturing condition and arranged for tooling on it, and probably developed and polished up Walter's ideas and made them work and made them practical to manufacture to profit.
I never heard that.
Well, that's why I heard that story, but I would credit that much more than I would credit the Tillman story. Mm-hmm. Because as far as I know, Tillman never became any great importance anywhere. Mm-hmm. And if a man is granted, if he has valuable patents, he has control of them. Nobody can take them away from him. Mm-hmm. He might have, I suppose he might have signed them under certain conditions, but if he does, he's very stupid.
You were in engineering back in those days when many of these basic ideas were being developed. Yeah. Do you remember submitting these drawings for the patent attorneys? No. In those days, if you went and you had to start working at Square D, when you're hired in to work in engineering and develop and invent new devices, you sign a contract. Yes.
Anything you develop in their time is their property.
Right, I can appreciate that, but do you remember them telling you to get this ready, we're going to patent it, and you would have to make the basic drawings?
No.
At all?
Nobody's ever said to me about patents at all.
Yeah.
In fact, I never, no patents were granted to me until I'd been at Square D for, I think, about the Second World War. Yeah. I had developed some devices before that at Square D, and when I signed this contract, I had no comeback. Right. But about that time, they began to letting you put your name on the patent. Yeah. And getting a little credit for it.
But none of that ever happened at Honeywell, where to your knowledge they were applying for basic patents?
Nobody ever said anything. Well, the devices were already in production. I went down there. All I ever was able to do was just improve them. Yeah.
And they wouldn't qualify as patentable?
Well, it was probably patentable. Somebody may have. I think I had the impression that Lord Huff might have had some patents assigned to him. Yeah. He was Secretary of Treasury of the Honeywell Specialties Company under Mr. Honeywell.
How long did he stick around, Mr. Huff?
Well, he was there after the merger. Then he went to Milwaukee or Minneapolis.
He went to Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Now, how about McNamee?
I don't know what happened to Harry. Harry was an elderly man at the time I was down there. He and Joe Tigg, they were wealthy men here in Wabash in their own right. And I think they just went down and sat in their office a few hours each day. They killed time. Mm-hmm. There's nothing for them to do. There's only 2 men in the shop working under them. Mm-hmm. And I think Harry later moved to he had a cottage in Northport, Maine, where he spent his summer. And I think he finally moved up there and lived. I think he died up there in Northport.
I didn't know that.
And I think Joe Tigg moved to Wisconsin, I believe. Well, I want to say Wausau. I don't know what he was doing. He bought into something concerned with Wausau, I believe it was.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
But they were both old Wabash families, the Tiggs and McNamees both. Well, Joe Tig's father had a shoe store down in Wabash for a long time on Wabash Street, on
Wabash Street?
about where the bakery's in there now.
But both were eminently successful. Time
Oh,
on
yes,
to,
yes, they had, Joe Tig, the story about him was that he had, when his father died, the family didn't have a great deal of money. He sold his father's shoe store and raked all the money he get, went to Chicago and played on the Board of Trade, and made a killing there, apparently, to get him started. And I think that probably his interest in the Honeywell Heating Specialty Company is only one of many.
Side number 2, William Houston Woods. We were talking about Mr. Teague and Mr. McNamee when our tape ran out there a couple seconds ago, Houston. You were telling me about Mr. Teague had made some money on the Board of Trade.
That may be one of these stories, I don't know, but he was the type of, it would impress you as a gambling type. But apparently he was spectacularly successful in his first venture. Because they were a wealthy family, I knew, and he did get out of his father's shoe store.
Did you ever think of buying Honeywell stock when it went public? Or
No, I never did.
just no money at that time? Or?
At that time, is this something you just didn't do? And I wasn't interested in it. I think the only flyer I took the stock was in city service right during the bottom of the Depression when it went down. It had fallen from 150 down to about 12, I think it was. I must be talking 12. I think I sold it at 14, just about made the brokerage fee on it both ways.
Yeah. Obviously, there must have been a young woman came into your life someplace along the line, and why don't you tell me about her and her maiden name and your life with your family and everything?
Well, I was married when I was 30 years old. Her name was Violet Williamson, and her folks lived on a farm out in the township outside the town here. It's a picture of her. I just finished drawing a picture of her here about 2 months ago. And the picture, a photograph I was taken just before she was married, before we were married.
That's the original of the, is that a chalk drawing or?
Crayon.
Crayon, yeah.
Color pencil.
Very nice.
I have one son, lives in Michigan.
And what does he do? What is his occupation?
My son?
Yes.
Well, he's sort of semi-retired now. As I told you, he operated a motel. He owned and operated a motel in Clarkston, Michigan, and not too far from Detroit, west of Pontiac. We had no hotel, I guess, for 58, and operated until last year, 72, 14 years. And he sold the motel. The property value had increased tremendously where he was, and he made quite a profit. I think he bought the motel for $15,000, and of course had put a lot of improvement work on it, and sold it for $200,000. And
That's better than playing the stock market.
it sure is.
Yeah.
Well, when they bought that land there, it was on a good highway, but it wasn't developed. While he lived there, the town simply moved out around him, and the value of property skyrocketed enormously. It built up solid now in business. Just before he left, a new Kmart was putting right across the street from him, and a filling station both beside his hotel. So he's done far better than I ever did financially. And
Did you ever feel that you were, or I should say, did you feel that you were well compensated in your early years at Honeywell?
yes, I got the going skill and price, and I think I got far more in satisfaction and people that I knew and met, and the pleasure of working there. That was worth a lot to me. But I say, what I find, I was still getting the going wage of the kind of work I was doing for those times. I was very happy there. I loved it.
Did you ever think the company would be this big?
Well, I don't think those ever given any thought. And no, I often wish that I knew the manipulation went on after I left there. The Mr. Honeywell got back in the saddle again, because now it's called simply just Honeywell Incorporated. The Minneapolis name has faded entirely out of the picture. After the merger, it's called the Minneapolis Honeywell Company instead of the Minneapolis Heat Regulator Company. It was still even MH, like it was before. And I never get any thought. I don't, well, of course, you couldn't see things like the Second World War, where Honeywell got in a lot of buried lines, and got into a lot of military work. And some lines which I think are still top secret. I don't think anybody knows exactly what all they are doing there now.
Did you think the sweats really got the best of the deal?
Oh, yes, unquestionably they did.
Yeah. Why? Why do you think that happened?
Well, they acquired they swallowed their only competitor. That's what happened there.
Yeah.
We were always running second.
Uh-huh.
We was always on their heels, and we developed some new devices to get them in trouble. But whereas we took a line of automatic switching of oil burners and the gas controls by a motor-operated device that revolved the shaft. Whereas they did it by a time delay device on the thermostat. So there's two different approaches to the same thing. But they acquired all the Honeywell patents and the Honeywell know-how and also all the Honeywell business. As I say, they simply swallowed their competitor. They took him out of the picture entirely.
Well, didn't other competitors spring up fast then?
No.
Not in that field?
We swallowed one competitor down here, the old Jewel Electric Company in New York. I think we're over New York. And we bought them out in about 1923 or 4, as I understood it, just to get some basic patents they held. Because apparently they had a very small business down there. I remember seeing all those drawings they gave. In fact, I filed them away and just signed numbers to them. And
They didn't bother operating the Jewel plant at all?
no, they continued to make one or two items, and they called the Honeywell Jewel items, I guess. But they soon dropped that entirely because we had competitive lines that, since we were still active, we were developing new things, and Jewel was out of the picture. They so quickly became obsolete. And everything I ever worked at, nothing ever stayed put because there's always been continuing to change and improve.
Was Mr. Shivers, mentioned was the head of engineering and then went on to bigger things?
Well, he was transferred to head engineering at I think at Minneapolis. I'm not sure about that. No, I'm wrong about that. I was trying to think of the man's name that still held the title up there, chief engineer.
But he went to Minneapolis?
He went to Minneapolis, yeah. He had a big family, and I think one of his daughters married one of the Ebbinghaus boys.
Yes, that's Jim that's just retired.
Yeah,
last
I
year.
think that was.
I did his tape.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
It was not Lois. It was the next girl, the next Shivers girl. I can't think what her name was anymore. Well, anyway.
Phyllis.
Phyllis, yeah.
What other reflections do you have at 75 looking back?
Oh, I've had a very happy life.
Have you really?
I really enjoy it. I think that about everything good that could happen, the purchase happened to me. I've never made a lot of money, but I've done a lot of things that have been satisfying.
Which is more important?
Well, I don't know. If you make enough to have enough to eat and a pleasant place to live, I think that's most important. I think money is I've never driven any driving ambition like some people have to amass money for the sake of money. I never had that appetite. But I did love to be able to create something. I think I'd like to create things more than anything else. And,
Go.
well, this is not into the Honeywell. I'm just taking up your time.
No, I'm interested in you. Number one, as a former Honeywell employee, and number two, the fact that you have lived 75 years and started in Wabash and now finishing in Wabash.
Well, I was intending to come back to Wabash when I retired. I always thought that I would do that.
Why?
Well, I like the town. We still had a few relatives here, and I just thought I would like the same old familiar streets and places that I'd known as a young man. And I lived when I was 30 years old, and we were gone then for, I was 34 years old when I left here. I turned 32, and we were gone for 35 years. And at security, I was at the Detroit plant until they closed the plant there. I was there for 25 years. And well, I had a labor problem there, and it was in a part of town we couldn't expand. And we had a very nice multi-story building which you can't automate. And you got to have a single level to automate successfully. So they decided to get out of Detroit entirely. They considered one time moving up to a new established laboratory near north of Detroit. They never went through. So finally they split the plant 3 ways. They took the executive offices to Park Ridge, a suburb of Chicago. And then they built 2 new plants. At that time they built many more since then. They built one new plant in Lexington, Kentucky. And all of the switch work, the non-automatic work went to Lexington, Kentucky. And the work I was on developing circuit breakers, automatic control, was taken to the new plant at Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I was out of Cedar Rapids for 8 years and retired from out there. And we love Cedar Rapids. We put in our state out there. It's a lovely town. But the winters are horrible. We don't live about winter here in Wabash. But
Do you ever see any of your old boyhood chums?
Oh, yes, here in Wabash I do. There's several around. You got to go Ron McDaniels and the Schinkel. And there's Howard Smith here. I guess he's still living. Of course, Carl Schwab was down there. And several I met worked there when I did.
What do you do to occupy your time now?
Not very much. I'm just playing off the string, I guess. I enjoy drawing and artwork to a certain extent. I had no formal training in it, but I made several portraits and sold them. And I keep my house here, and that's just enough light exercise to keep you moving and keep you limbered up.
When did Mrs. Williams die?
4 years ago.
4 years
Yeah.
ago. Had she been sick a long time?
Yeah, she's sick long. She had cancer, and she died a horrible death. And my dad and mother did too, for that matter. All three of them died of cancer. Oh. And she had it in Cedar Rapids, and the doctors there didn't seem to be able to identify it as what it was. And they took X-rays and made blood tests, and they didn't seem to come up with anything. And I think last day that there was confusion on her X-rays because there was a lot that went on out there. They even got blood samples mixed up out there and X-rays mixed up. And I imagine somebody sitting out there yet shivering, expecting to die of cancer, and got my wife's X-rays. And we came back to Wabash. She was beginning to, she had slowed up. She wasn't too ill, but I took Dr. Robert LaSalle. That's my brother-in-law's doctor here, and he found her trouble right away. But then it was too late. They operated on her, but it was too late. She just went right on downhill. They gave her enough blood, I think, to supply 3 or 4 persons that time, and I think everything be done for her. And they gave her the cobalt treatment, which didn't seem to help any either. I think I got a friend that's going to cobalt treatment now in Chicago. I don't think he's going to pull through.
You keep a nice, comfortable house and seem to enjoy yourself.
Oh, I do. I guess I'm a domestic mind or something kind. I enjoy having things in the house. I enjoy my hobby of gun collecting, and I had to collect the furniture before I got in the gun business. That chair, there are 3-cornered chairs, what they call a roundabout chair. I came from old Judge Connor's estate here in Wabash. I bid that in. The sale and his estate was sold before we left here.
That's an unusual looking chair. It's
an unusual chair. I'm kind of proud of it. It's a strictly American design. It's what they call country American, I guess. But it's well made. It's the right trade. It's very close to some English period furniture.
Hey, there's a question I forgot to ask you. Did you ever join the Ku Klux Klan?
Never did.
Why not?
I don't know, because Willard Huff, who was next to Mr. Hunter, was my boss, was a very active member. He was the very first there. He mentioned one time to me, he must have had instructions not to put any pressure, but he just very casually mentioned my joining it, but I never did. My father belonged to it. I think my father joined it to protect his job he was in. I think he thought he had to keep working where he was.
Yeah. But Mr. Huff never put any pressure on you.
Oh, no. He just mentioned very casually one day. And it wasn't more than half a dozen words, I don't think. And I had no desire to join it. I didn't know much of a joiner anyway. I belonged to Masons, the only thing I belonged to. And there's no pressure on it to join it at all. But it's quite a thing in Indiana. Of course, you know the Governor McCrae scandal.
Yes.
And I was trying to think of this man to spend all the rest of his life in prison. Killed this prostitute down in Indiana, down in Indianapolis.
Stevenson?
Stevenson, yeah.
Yes.
Somebody wanted him kept in jail. He knew something. They weren't going to let him get out to talk or testify. They kept him in jail until he died there.
No, he isn't dead.
He isn't dead?
No, well, as far as I know, he got out.
Was that right?
Yes, and he sort of disappeared into the woodwork. No one knows where he is.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, he's probably afraid of probably scared of the Klan to this day, I suspect.
Well, I don't know. Do you think it's still a force?
Well, I think it is, in some localities.
Yeah. Did you think it was a force here in those days?
Oh, yes. Indiana and Iowa were 2 states that were very susceptible, seemed to lodges and organizations. People seem to love the lodge, working the Brigadian, all the mystic handshakes and grips and that sort of thing. You know.
Why?
I don't know. There's something about the American, because Iowa and the Hoosier, the whole kind of Hoosier are identical. Yeah. They think alike, they react alike, they even sound alike.
Well, the people from, when Indiana was settled, the ones that wanted to move on, the great majority of them went on to Iowa.
Yeah,
even from
true.
Wabash here.
Yeah, they
just
true. Yeah. No, I think it was very important here because I say the Hoosiers always liked Lodgeburg. I think that's what got a lot of them into it. I think after they got into it, they finally realized it was something more than what they had bargained for. Of course, one of the Biggerstaff boys here was Dr. Biggerstaff's boy was one of the organizers, and he got his start in Iowa and came to Wabash later. And well, I remember they had several parades they had downtown with their again their uniforms, you know, all dressed up in sheets. You couldn't tell who they were. And my wife always laughed about her aunt. She was quite active in Alexandria, and she was one of the parades down here. And well, I said that she wouldn't disguise. I said she was so bold I could tell who she was anyway. My wife always laughed about that, about her aunt Pearlie. She's dead now. Died a number of years ago. I think it, like my father, it influenced a lot of people. I think they thought the pressure, they were afraid of pressure to be put on that they didn't join. They were afraid not to join. The job I had at Honeywell never occurred to me, and I'd had any pressure put on me. There was no pressure was put on. I knew the roller top was very active in the Klan, and I'm surprised that a fellow like him would be.
Why?
Well, he was not a typical joiner, and he just didn't seem the type of person to be interested in lodge work. He belonged to the Elks, so I don't think he belonged to anything in Wabash. A very practical person. I always thought he was very good common sense, and just don't know. He didn't seem like the type for it.
Yeah. Who do you think was pushing the Klan back in those days? I mean, if you were going to put your finger on somebody.
I don't know. I don't know who the high officials were. I guess I never did know. Yeah. But there's a lot of people in Wabash belong to it. And it's thrown quite a bit of weight here. Until after the Stevenson scandal, then the whole thing just collapsed. That was the end. People finally found what they'd been tricked into, I think, and they really got the picture finally. And the Klan pretty much folded. Of course, did it nationally, I think, as well as in the state.
Did you ever miss a payday?
Never did.
All through the Depression?
Never missed
Two
one.
depressions.
In fact, I left Honeywell and went out to Shearer, and I got double pay for 2 weeks because I had my paid vacation from Honeywell, so I went out there. I was paid for 2 weeks of vacation after I was out at Shearer's. I was on their payroll. I never lost an hour of time through that.
Were you conscious of the Depression?
Oh, yes. And I'll be conscious of it because that was the most important thing in everybody's life. Of course, if you had a job, it was good because prices were down. I remember after we went out to Shearer's, and I was making about $300 a month out there at Shearer's. I go over to the grocery, I could buy a sack of oranges this high for 20 cents. And you could buy the best cuts of meat for 25 cents a pound. And it was any kind of salary. You just really had it made.
But you worked right straight through the Depression, never missed a
Yes,
payday?
never missed a payday. Never missed an hour of lost time.
That's pretty remarkable.
Well, I guess a lot more people did too, I imagine there were, but anyway, I wasn't concerned with them, but I was just lucky that I was able to do it. It wasn't because I was any smarter or more desirable or any more proficient. I just happened to be at the place at the time to do it, to make the change. And I say when I seen that the Shearers were going to be in trouble, I started looking for a job then. I had a job at Square D then, and I was there for a total of 35 years at Square D. And I made many friends there.
Isn't that odd that you just kept right in really the basic business that you started in Wabash?
Automatic controls.
Yeah, all your life.
Yeah. It was automatic controls at Honeywell's, and then it was in the gas controls. It was coal burning and oil fire controls at Honeywell's. And they were just beginning to get the air conditioning controls when the merger took place. And then it was the air conditioning controls, the gas controls at Shearer's, and at Square D was the pressure controls of pressure tanks and pump controls, and later in the circuit breaker work. All automatic controls, though, responding to different means for different purposes.
What would you say, looking back on your life, the one thing or things that made the greatest impression or had the greatest impact? We go back, telephone, electricity, radio. Do you remember anything that you thought, my gosh, this is fantastic, or this is a momentous event? Or
well, I don't know. I always had a job that was looking ahead to something that wasn't on the market yet. I always looked ahead to these things, so I guess the other things I more or less was aware that they were coming, and I think I more or less took them for granted. I think maybe in terms of television, the first thing I thought was remarkable they could transfer a picture.
Television.
I think that was about the first thing that struck me as being really something different and wonderful.
Do you remember the first automobile you saw in Wabash?
Oh, yes. Well, see if I can say about the same time. I know T.F. Bond, who was president of the Wabash Cabinet Company back in the early 1900s, had an electric car here. And about the same time, Jim Adams on the south side went to Detroit and drove a Ford home, one of the first Fords off the Highland Park plant, and drove back to Wabash. And my uncle George Ausch had a Model 10 Buick, a 1910 Buick. Now, which was the first car, I couldn't say. I've been told that the Jim Adams' Ford was the first car in Wabash, because I think automobiles were in use in the larger city a long time before they ever got down here. But I just couldn't say about that.
Can you think of anything else for the record that you'd like to add?
Oh, I can tell you one thing that I think is the most important thing that I did, that I'm very proud of, and
I want to hear it.
having to prove it, but I'm just I've been pleased about it. When I was Square D, during the Second World War, they during Patton's African campaign, they got in trouble with the fuse panels on their fighter planes. That was the P-51 and the P-47, the P-39, and the trouble became so bad that the Square D was approached as along with other companies to develop an automatic circuit breaker for aircraft control. Be a very tight array. I finally wound up on about this long, about 3/4 inch thick. For the aircraft, of course, there are a lot of circuits, even in those old planes. And so we worked frantically on that. It's kind of a day and night proposition. We worked against the clock on that thing. And the thing is my invention from start to finish. Well, of course, I took the old basic principle and just adapted to a smaller size what I mounted to, and adapted the mounting for aircraft panels. And later we used them in tanks and submarines and other military devices. We made millions of them at Square D. And all the cases made down here at Peru, the Peru plant, all the little victuals made down there. Anyway, Patton ran into this trouble. It became so serious that he had to ground all of his fighter planes. And nobody ever knew why the war came to a complete stop, because he was moving very rapidly, pushing the Germans right across North Africa at that time. And but he had no more air support for his men. So rather than just sitting and set about to be killed, he just grounded the planes and stopped any aggressive operations. And of course, the government knew we were getting pretty close to having a device for them. So the first we had ready for shipment, they flew them from, I'm talking about a little tiny device that weighed about 2 or 3 ounces. They flew the first several thousand cases from Peru to the Detroit plant. We selling them there and built the breakers and tested them. And so they were taken by plane from Detroit to Gander, Newfoundland. And they were flown across the Atlantic in the first fighter plane to make an Atlantic crossing. They took one of the B-47 Republic Thunderbolt planes and stripped it of all its guns and armor, and everything but just gasoline and carrying capacity. And it made the first fighter crossing of the Atlantic. They flew through from Gander to London, or to the airfield near London. Then London was picked up by a British plane then and taken down to North Africa. And of course, as soon as it landed there, using a screwdriver, I guess, is put to work to converting the old fuse panels to the new breaker panels. And about a week then, the war started up again. He got his planes back in there, and the war restarted. I was kind of proud of that. Square D got a citation for the project, and I had some letters of commendation for it, and I get a little credit for it. I guess about the proudest that I ever did.
Oh, good.
There wasn't any basic idea on my part. Just a case of taking something and adapted to a certain highly specialized use. We made millions of those. We wore out 3 sets of Bakelite molds down there, pretty well.
Yeah, I'll be done. Well, I think it's been an extremely interesting afternoon. I know a lot about you now.
I've talked about myself steadily for a couple of hours, I guess.
I think that's great. And gee, you just don't know how much that I appreciate this, and I know that future generations coming along.
Well, I think that what you're doing is future generations are going to be glad that you did it, and you've got all this information together, such as it is.
I hope so. I have a good composite story on Honeywell's and a good composite on Wabash. And
well, Mark Honeywell's a wonderful man. I admire him tremendously, and I think he's a second Henry Ford. I think the two come out of the same mold.
Yes, that seems to be a great consensus.
Just like Henry, he was a tall, slender, active, very intense person. I wouldn't say he was as unconscious of money as Henry was. I think the Henry money didn't mean a darn thing. And Mr. Henry always walked at a very brisk pace. Now, Henry ran. I've seen him get out of his car and run as hard as he'd run across the street to his office. And he was eccentric in a lot of ways. still a great man.
Yeah. Did you know the first Mrs. Honeywell, by the way?
Yes, all of Lutz.
Was she?
Very nice one, very gracious.
Yeah.
And of course, when I first went to work down there, her father still lived in the old Lutz place on the corner of Market and Cass Street, where the bank is now. There's a big yard with an iron fence all around the yard, and a big old brick house sitting back in there, which is gone now, of course. And in fact, it was Mark's father-in-law's money, or Reuben Lutz's money, that bailed him out during the Depression after the end of the First World War.
Yeah.
By the time I went down there, when they were in such dire straits.
Where did he make his money, Mr. Lutz?
I don't know. He was I think he was a farmer and he dealt in real estate, I think. I don't think he was ever a merchant. I don't believe that he was. I don't know much about him. Most of those were merchants, but I don't think he was. I think he was in real estate and farming. But she was, I think, an only child, I remember. And so when his son-in-law got in pretty bad shape, I guess old Rube turned it all loose cash. He had him to pull his plant through down there. And,
I remember that house.
do you?
Yeah.
I hate to see it go. I hate to see so many of these old houses in Wabash go. The old Albert Place used to be up here where the Robin Hood store is now, and the old Shoulder Place there on Noble Street and Manchester Avenue, and of course Cowgill's old house down here. I had one of my uncles landscaped that place when Cal Cowgill first put that house up there. I saw Nancy went at the library. She told me something I didn't know or suspect, that her father, her grandfather, built all those houses in the next block west there on Sinclair Street. All those nice old houses.
I didn't know that.
The old Bailey house there where Slimmer had his plumbing shop in. Yeah. And I guess I think clear down to the house in the corner where Leonard Fox used to live on where the Electrolux place is now. I guess he built
them all.
Built all those houses for rental, as I understand, in the first place.
For rental, pretty nice.
Pretty nice rental property, yeah.
They certainly were.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Well, I might be wrong about the Bailey property, but I understood he built it. I could be wrong about that, because Bob Bailey and his wife lived there for many years. That was always called the old Bailey place.
Yeah. Do you remember any old Civil War veterans around when you were a kid?
Oh, yes, and I loved history, and I was about 12 years old. There's Eli Hutchins on the south side, and somebody always called him Old Man Coble. I never knew what his proper name was. And I would go down there, and if I get in the right humor, they would tell me all the stories about the battles they'd been in. And Eli Hutchins especially, he was a battle of Chickamauga, he was a big Grant, he was there with. And he told me how the first day, how the Confederates outmaneuvered them and trapped them and shot down somebody before they had a chance to wake up and get their clothes on and pick up their guns. And he told a lot of stories about the war and also about his life after the war after he came back to Wabash again.
Hutchins?
Hutchins.
Hutchins.
There used to be a lot of them in South Wabash. I think the families either died out or moved away pretty much now. There was Eli Hutchins, my friend, there's Ansel Hutchins, Calvin Hutchins, and I think more than that. And all their children lived around at one time too. And the third generation about my age. Well, Eli had one child, had a daughter, Zoe Hutchins. She was a teacher in the schools at that time here. And she was very good. I never could comprehend, as the third or fourth grade at that time, I never could comprehend a long division, so I never could get it. And so I was talking to him one night. She said, so Houston, how's school? And I said, well, it's pretty good. I can't understand long division. She said, you can't? So that's easy. And she sat down with me, and in about 10 minutes, I had the whole thing in my head. It was just that easy, the way she taught it. I think she was a genius as a teacher. But Eli was a great, big, burly man, very, very strong even his age. I think he lived in 1936. According to his tombstone I see down here at the Crater Cemetery.
And he was Civil War veteran.
Civil War veteran, yeah. There was a volunteer coming who went from Wabash down there. I think it was later taken into an enlisted regiment, but they went left here under their own, the name of the Wabash Volunteers, some such number. And I think they trained down on the south side there. It used to be my grandfather's farm there on the hall, where Cecil Mills used to live down there. How
did the Mills family, they buy a piece of that property, your grandfather? Or?
I don't know. No, I think it must have been, I think it was a long lapse of time between when my grandfather had and before Cecil built his house down there. Yeah. Well, Elisha Mills was another Civil War veteran, yes. And I was in his daughter's class in the third grade in school, the south side, and she had him come down there to school and talk to us about some of the Civil War, not about the battles or fighting, about how the soldiers lived several times. I enjoyed that very much. He was quite a good talker. In fact, I think he's a minister. And Murray had one of the old prophets. He had a great white beard, you know, and he's quite an impressive looking old man, very straight, even at that age. And he told a lot of the camp life and things they had to do and had to try to make do with things, how they improvised. And it was all he made it very interesting, especially to me, since I've always loved history. And so he was never a personal friend of mine. I never went to his house and talked to him like I did these other two men.
This old man Coble, is that the man?
I get it wrong. His name was Hutton. Hutton was his name.
Hutton.
I don't think there's any of the family around here anymore. I'm sure there isn't. At that time when I knew him, he was an old man. I would guess he was in his 80s when I knew him. I'd been back about the early part of the century.
Isn't that amazing, this thread of history that runs through our lives?
It sure is.
Yeah.
I've been impressed by it quite often. It seems like it's really continuous. It overlaps. There's no breaks anywhere.
I think that's remarkable.
I think it is, yeah.
Well, I think we've pretty well exhausted everything.
Well, I think we have. I talk about myself as my favorite subject, I guess.
If you don't know it, no one else does.
Well,
when you get this tape, you'll get the typed copy, and then you correct it any way that you want to on these names or dates or add or subtract, and take it from there.
Well, I would think to add. I think I told you about everything.
Well, you might think you don't have anything to add, but when you get down to reading it, you might have a lot to add.
Well, I love Wabash. I'd love to come back here again. I've been active since I've been back here. I'm retired. Nobody wants me to do a job anymore, though I'd love to find something to do. But
well, maybe we could get you to work with the senior citizens.
Well, that repulses me. More like have an organization.
Yeah.
I'm just silly enough to want to associate with younger people.
Oh, sure.
I feel oppressed
Yes.
with these people that are. I'm lucky that I've never really been sick in my life.
Uh-huh.
And my health is good. And I hate to be these people that are crippled, that know that they have an terminal illness of some kind. It oppresses me. I could never go to live in one of these retirement homes anywhere. That would kill me to have to do that. When I get to where I can't take care of this house, I'll really be in bad shape when I leave here, because I'll have to be before I give up on it.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
And I don't know. I guess I've always been sort of a loner. I'd like to do things my own way. And I still like to be to myself and be independent the way it is now. I can come and go as I please. I can do it because nobody cares where I come and go. And I like this sort of life. It's very lonely because I miss my wife horribly. We were married for 41 years. It's the best thing I can do now. I like to have my own house and maintain this to suit myself. And I want to buy a piece of furniture or sell a piece. I can bring in something newer or dispose of what I have.
You belong to a church?
First Methodist.
Yeah. Active?
Well, I pay on a bigger pledge than I can afford. And actually financially, I'll put it that way. That's the only way.
Yeah.
No, they didn't need me down there. I came back and these men are nearly all straight except the Ford boys. The Ford boys are all very nice to me. Of course, they're nice to everybody, I think.
Yes, they are.
They're wonderful men.
Yeah.
Of course, I knew Wilbur and especially because they used to have a brass foundry down at the old Ford, down at the old plant there, and we used to buy brass casting when I was at Honeywell's. And he sold casting to me for a long time. But they're all just real wonderful men. They're all in high school about the time that I was. And,
well, as I say, again, I thank you for your time, and we'll close this interview, and this is George Dingledye.